Explore today's must-have trends and innovative styles at Mrs. B's Clearance and Outlet. Shop one-of-a-kind finds in today's must-have trends. Explore wall-to-wall deals, furniture, flooring, mattresses, home accents, seasonal favorites, and more. Discover unique new home decor, pillows, accessories, and more. There's something perfect for your style and budget. There's new inventory every day at up to 80% off suggested retail. Discover the style and savings of Mrs. B's Clearance and Outlet.
When it comes to quality sleep, Ashley has you covered with top mattress brands at winning prices and with special financing options available. You can snooze now and pay later. Plus, your mattress purchase helps give the gift of better sleep to children in need and U.S. Special Operations Forces. Visit your local Ashley store or shop online today and make every snooze count. Financing is subject to credit approval. See store or ashley.com for details. Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man who's looking forward to turkey and sweet potato pie. Remember, Sammy Davis Jr. only had one eye. Here's the captain.
It's good to be seen, and it's good to see you. And yes, I say that to my family at Thanksgiving. Thanks for listening, and thanks for telling a friend.
Well, when life gives you lemons, you make lemon shandy. That's what the captain says, and that's what the good folks over at Susquehanna Brewing Company say as well. Today we are drinking Shady Spot Lemon Shandy. This is basically beer and lemonade mingling together in a taste bud tingling harmony. Shady Spot is a World Beer Cup Gold Award winner. Garage grade 4.25 bottle caps out of 5. And we have some thanks and praise to hand out to our good friends. First up, a big cheers to Paul in Peoria, Arizona.
And a big we like your drip from Danielle and Napa.
Next, we have Lisa and Chad from Toronto that say, "Go Bucks."
Michigan sucks. And a big shout out to Jenny in Austin, Texas.
Next up, we have Angie Clark in South Lake Tahoe, California. And last, but certainly not least, a big cheers and thank you to Cole Switzer in beautiful Sherwood Park, Canada. Everyone we just mentioned went to truecrimegarage.com and contributed to this week's beer fund. And for that, well, we are thankful.
And when you're at truecrimegarage.com, make sure you sign up on our mailing list. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you need more episodes, download the Stitcher app. It's free. And check out our bonus show called Off the Record. And that is enough of the business.
All right, everybody, gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime. John Douglas started his career with the FBI in 1970. In the field, he served as a hostage negotiator. He transferred to the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, or BSU for short, in 1977, where he taught hostage negotiation and applied criminal psychology at the FBI Academy in Quantico. Douglas later went on to create and manage the FBI's criminal profiling program. While traveling around the country providing instruction to law enforcement agencies, Douglas began interviewing serial killers and other violent sex offenders at various prisons. He interviewed some of the most notable violent criminals as part of the study, including David Berkowitz, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Charles Manson, and Edmund Kemper. He used the information gathered from these interviews, he examined crime scenes, and created profiles of the perpetrators, describing their habits and attempting to predict their next move. In cases where his work helped to capture the criminals, he built strategies for interrogating and prosecuting them as well. Douglas first made a public name for himself with the involvement in the Atlanta child murders. Douglas first made a public name for himself with his involvement in the Atlanta child murders case back in 1977 to 1981. He is the author of two of the Garage's favorite true crime books, Mindhunter and The Cases That Haunt Us. And he's joining us here in the Garage today via telephone. And Mr. Douglas, it is an honor to have you joining us once again.
Well, thank you.
First off, Mr. Douglas, everybody wants to know, will there be season 3 of Mindhunter? You certainly have the inside track. What can you tell us? Will it happen and when?
I'll tell you, now it's like 2 months ago, I got a call from Holt McCallany, who plays Bill Tench character. He stayed with me when he was developing his part in the show, but he sounded kind of grim, and was that all the actors want to return, but it was a question with David Fincher, the director. He spent so much time filming in Pittsburgh. For each season, he spent about 7 months there, and he's such a perfectionist that the actors are working almost the entire year on each series. What they were saying that he's exhausted. I just don't personally understand it. Neither some of the actors. Why don't you use some other directors? There were other directors involved in season 1 and season 2 of the 19 total episodes in 2 seasons. Fincher did 7 of them. Personally, did 7. But when he did the series House of Cards, he started it, but then other directors took over for the show. So it's just everyone's hoping. It got tremendous ratings. The reviews were all good, but it doesn't. For now, it's not. He takes, if you can recall season 2, the first episode, just to give you an idea, there was a barbecue scene with Bill Tench, and he's meeting his neighbors who are finding out for the first time kind of what he does with the profiling and at Quantico and all that, and they start asking questions. That one scene was repeated nearly 75 times. 75 times before Fincher approved it, how he wanted that scene to go. And because he's made Netflix a lot of money. If it was anyone else, they would say, okay, it's fine, we'll get another director. But no, they're not doing it. But I just, in the back of my mind, I just think they will at some point. Yeah, I may be dead and buried, but at some point I hope they'll bring it back. There's so much more to tell. Even season 2, the Atlanta child killings. And the people listening to your show have to realize that's based on the book, but it's not the book. The Atlanta case did not go down like that. In fact, in reality, I thought it went down in the real way. It went down a lot more dramatic. And my role in that case, as far as coaching the prosecution on how to interrogate him when he would take the stand, my attitude toward the prosecutors and experts that the FBI and the state brought in there, and how they were going to throw my ass out of there. They did, because I was just so critical of them on how they testified. They were so technical, no one could even understand what they were saying. I couldn't understand what they were saying. And the defense experts that they brought in they may have been saying stuff that's not correct, their analysis, but it was clear. It was something that the jurors could follow, and they were nodding their heads like in agreement with their experts. So there's so much. So they didn't finish that case. I always think of it, season 3. They got that case. I think there's so many different cases. The Ted Bundy case. They could do Robert Hansen up in Alaska, who hunted women down like wild animals, which set them loose in the wilderness. And you have that case. You have Buffalo 22 caliber killer. There's the Tylenol case. Then cases of smaller, no one really the public doesn't even know about, but just very, very interesting cases. And it may not follow the book; they're kind of interpreting it the way they want to, but it's better than some of the other shows that I've seen. Even like with Criminal Minds, it was a very successful show. But behavioral science unit, when you're in that unit, you're not out making arrests, you're not taking cases away from police, you're not kicking down doors. It's cerebral when you reach the unit, and you're a coach. You're coaching FBI, you're coaching local law enforcement on how to investigate or lead them in the best direction for, say, an unknown subject case. So what they portrayed in Mindhunter series was good. Hopefully, it was a 5-year arc to the show. It's supposed to be on for 5 years, and then there's plenty of cases to fill up those 5 years. So we will see.
Yes, when asked to give a brief description about Mindhunter, when I recommend the show to friends and family, I always say it's the more adult, more intelligent, real-life version of Criminal Minds. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's such interest in that kind of show today, and these crime conferences around the country. It's amazing. When I haven't done any public speaking because of the COVID virus, but when I've been going out to conferences, 80-90% of the audience are women too, that are really into this. Well, they want to know because they're the victims of the kind of violent crimes that I and my colleagues have worked over the years, and they're interested in to better understand the personality, what creates these people, what makes these people, different than we are. What was their backgrounds? Was it predictable that they would commit, these types of crimes? And now with all these dating services, meeting people, at locations, you don't know. Just because someone puts a nice picture up and gives you this background bio, this little bio, doesn't mean that's who the person really is. My mother, when my since passed away, she used to tell my sister, when you meet a man or boy, this was years ago, when you meet a boy, ask him what his relationship is with his mother. And my mother was right on the money there, because of the people who I've interviewed, some of the most violent offenders, there was always an issue on the mother's side where there was this abuse or neglect of some type going on with them, and they loved their mother and at the same time they hated their mother. When I interviewed Gary Heidnik from Philadelphia, who kept women in the pit, like in the movie Silence of the Lambs, I interviewed him. Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes, just got to 60 Minutes, that's how long ago it was, in 1991, and followed me into Pittsburgh to interview, where I interviewed Gary Heidnik. And when I got around to talking about his mother, he just went absolutely nuts, and crying, and he loved her and hated her all at the same time, and she was very, very abusive, toward him. And this is not to say that everyone is abused will turn out to be a violent, anything. But I'm just saying, of the people who I've interviewed, rarely, I can't think of one that you could say came from some loving, nurturing kind of background. They all have some type of dysfunction, in their lives. Let's talk about the still unsolved, terrorizing murders and threats from the unidentified serial killer who called himself the Zodiac. You reviewed and profiled the Zodiac case years after the fact and still were able to offer up some very fascinating and intriguing analysis about the crimes and the person who committed them.
Yeah, with the Zodiac, the unit really never got involved with the analysis of that case. We've had a lot of people come forward over the years. There's been different suspects, developed. When that case was going on, we really didn't even have a behavioral science unit. When we finally got the case, it was when so-called Zodiac was wrote a communication to the detective who was assigned to the case. He had a private office, a private line, hotline, and so we were going to do an analysis of the communication. We call it psycholinguistic analysis. All it is just that you're doing a profile of the author of the communication. The police immediately called us up and said, "Stop, forget about it." Why? We figured out who wrote the communication. Who was it? The detective. What? Yeah, the detective wrote the communication himself. He's trying to, because he had not had any good leads, no lead. Everything just died. There was nothing going on. And to perpetuate the case, he wrote this so-called letter from the Zodiac. So, but as far as, I mean, it's a case. If it was a case today, I think we would be successful. When you get a case like that, and how I was evolving when I was the unit chief in the bureau and training others, I was kind of de-emphasizing the profile because the idea of a profile is you're trying to generate leads, you're trying to pique the mind, the interest of people who may know some of the characteristics of that are fitting this character, the person responsible for the crime. So I began to focus in more on proactive techniques and to maybe get the subject to inject himself in the investigation, or get the subject to go to a particular location because we may have planted something there. We may have had a memorial service there, and just give you an example. I was sent to go before the Internal Affairs. They call OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility, and which is not good when you go before Internal Affairs. And so I went before a whole group, and they said, "John, you're not lying, are you, to the media, through the media?" To the public, you're not lying, are you? I said, what do you mean? Are you telling the truth? I said, well, I don't know. I said, let me give you an example. I said, there's a case, and I told him, there's a case in San Diego that a woman car was broken down off the side of the road. She determined she ran out of gasoline. No one knows where she is for a day or two. Then they find her up in outside of San Diego in some foothills, and she has a dog collar around her neck. She's been sexually assaulted, and she's been garroted. I worked with the police. I'm telling the Internal Affairs this. I worked with the police. We came out with a series of articles. I said, because it was my opinion that whoever killed her was the guy who picked her up to take her maybe to a gas station. So she thought. And so we want to put a series of communications out looking for lead value. Did anyone see anything? Did anyone see anything? Any vehicle stop? Any description of a vehicle or a car? We put that out. We flood the airways, and we waited a couple of days, and now we come out with another. We're getting very good leads, thanking the public. We are now getting a description of not only the vehicle but the individual who stopped alongside of the victim's car. The purpose of that was to get the subject to inject himself into the investigation, to come up with a legitimate reason why he may have been spotted there. And sure enough, the guy injects himself into the investigation. That just so you know, that I was there. I offered her a ride. She said she ran out of gas, but she said no, so I went on my merry way. So I told Internal Affairs that was the guy. We arrested him, or the police arrested him. Now, if you're telling me am I lying to the press or whatever, well, it's not exactly the truth. It's not the truth, but we caught this. So the police caught it by using this technique. So and so they look at me and they said, well, we'll just tell you something. I said, we understand what you're saying, but if it ever gets out or anything, or you screw up, man, we're going to have your head. We're going to have your head. I'll be working cattle rustling cases in Butte, Montana, or someplace. If not fired from the bureau. So I started really working on proactive kinds of things and interview techniques and suggestions, because sometimes you may do a profile and it doesn't fit every characteristic. So someone will say, well, that profile they said he would have a college education, and this guy he's a high school high school education, or we may miss the age, which is difficult. Age is difficult because there's chronological age and behavioral age, and you may miss that. We missed the Arthur Shawcross case up in Rochester, New York. We missed it by about 15 years, and the reason we missed it was because he was incarcerated for those 15 years for a double homicide where he killed 2 children. And then he gets out of prison. It's unbelievable they let him out of prison after serving 15 years. And he goes up to Rochester and he starts killing prostitutes up in Rochester. So we got everything right, missed the age, but we staked out. We told them to stake out. If you find a body, don't recover it right away, but stake it out. And so the cops they get a lead. There's a body below a bridge, an overpass below a bridge in the country. And there's a victim down there, and it's frozen over with ice, and they stake it out, and guess what? Police are surveilling it. Here comes a guy, just sits on the edge of the bridge, eating, having a drink, and the victim is right below him, and that was Arthur Shawcross, serial killer in Rochester, New York. So it's I like the idea of developing, using imagination and creativity to catch these guys and kind of de-emphasize, like I said, de-emphasize the profile. Sometimes you can be right on the money. Some cases you can forget you can't do it because maybe too many types of people could perpetrate this kind of type of crime. And rape cases, we have surviving victims. We could be pretty good if we do the right kind of interview, or we coach the police to determine what was the verbal assault was, what the sexual assault was, and what the physical assault was. Verbal, sexual, physical. And what was it like throughout the first counter with the victim, during the sexual assault, and afterwards. Verbal, sexual, physical. And if we have that information, we do a good interview. That kind of case, we can do a very good profile and come up with, because we have a rape type. We have about 5 or 6 rape typologies based upon, if we have that kind of information, where we can determine pretty good who the offender is.
In a similar fashion, in regards to the Zodiac attack at Lake Berryessa, this is the murder of Cecilia Shepard and the attempted murder of Brian Hartnell. During the course of tying up the victims, the Zodiac killer, wearing a black executioner's type hood with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes disguise, he claimed to be an escaped convict from the Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge, Montana, where he had killed a guard and stole a car to make a getaway. Now he's telling the young couple he just needed their vehicle and money to drive and escape to Mexico. You had said you would have used that information to try to draw the killer out, to present himself to law enforcement and come forward. What would have been your strategy to do so?
Yeah, it would have just been to release. I just believe in working with the media, investigative reporters with the media, releasing information and not sitting on. You can sit on information for a period of maybe a couple of days or so, but at some point you have to release the information. Now, whether or not that information was true or not, we wouldn't have known that. Again, I'd have to. It's been so long since I even looked at that case. But let me tell you something else. It's similar. What he did, his technique, he was trying to defuse the situation. He was trying to calm the victims down. Don't worry, all I want is your vehicle. Same thing. I interviewed Dennis Rader, the BTK Strangler, in a case that I did in the 70s and 80s, and analysis never led to his arrest. His stupidity led to his arrest. But he used that same technique with the Otero family when he killed the Oteros and the children, the mother and father. That please, all I want, I just want your car, and your money. I'm not going to do anything to you. And so that they allowed. It was a very good modus operandi. It allowed him to diffuse the situation and and gain control of them and tie them up. It's going back to the Zodiac. It kind of shows you, though, it's pretty sophisticated. It's a pretty good MO, to use, and it almost sounds like it's been so long. It almost sounds like a law enforcement technique. Dennis Rader was the pseudo law enforcement. He was a compliance officer in town. He was studying criminal justice at Wichita State. So a lot of these serial killer types do have law enforcement backgrounds. Look at the Golden Gate Killer, out there, and but even others who, or you ask them what would be your favorite profession, and be generally it's law enforcement is what they pick, and some of them will even actually work as security guards. So, but sometimes it's disturbing to see how. I can't think of the name. You probably know this, Nick. The case in Indiana of the two little girls that were on that bridge.
Yes, the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German from Delphi, Indiana.
I did a brief interview on, I think it was Good Morning America, and I had that other book out, Killer Cross, and they threw out that case. And they never, you can sit on that information, but when they had the audio tapes, and it was like, I think if I recall, it was something like "Come with me, follow me," or something like "Come with me."
Yes, the perpetrator said, "Guys, down the hill." Yeah,
and it sounded authoritarian. Man, and they sat on that. God, wasn't it like 2 years or so? It was ridiculous. You don't sit on something like like that. For that period of time. That case to me, that was a solvable kind of case. That is not it's not a case where some stranger comes roaming into a community and just by the fluke, and this, I think it was like a winter day, he comes across this railroad trestle and he confronts these girls. It's like there's this knowledge of the area. That's his comfort zone, that area there, whatever that area is like. I just don't know. I know it was just rural. I don't know. We don't know how they were killed. If you knew how they were killed, even like I said, you can sit on it for a while, but I think it would have been very solvable. If I would have known, like, were they sexually assaulted? Yes or no? Were they both sexually assaulted? Were they redressed? Were they unclothed? Did he pose the bodies? Did he try to secrete the bodies, hide the bodies from open view? Are they missing anything? Any jewelry, any clothing, or anything like that? Method of death. Can we determine who was killed first? It's really a solvable case, but not a year later, 2 years, 2 years later. Unless they luck out and get DNA. But it upsets me sometimes when I see, why didn't they release this information? I do the same thing with the Bureau too, with our own cases. You can sit on them for a while, but bits and pieces of information you can certainly let out to the public.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you look forward to the holidays? Maybe you struggle with seasonal blues. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness or even anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot, something to look forward to make you feel grounded, and to give you the tools to manage everything going on. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/garage today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/garage.
Explore today's must-have trends and innovative styles at Mrs. B's Clearance and Outlet. Shop one-of-a-kind finds in today's must-have trends. Explore wall-to-wall deals, furniture, flooring, mattresses, home accents, seasonal favorites, and more. Discover unique new home decor, pillows, accessories, and more. There's something perfect for your style and budget. There's new inventory every day at up to 80% off suggested retail. Discover the style and savings of Mrs. B's Clearance and Outlet.
Canva presents True Crime of Design. In the office, Maya spots something unusual in the presentation.
What's this?
It was an off-brand font. Her coworker explains.
I added the font. I thought it was fun.
It was not. Maya solved it with Canva.
Open up Canva, one click, and the font is on brand. Easy.
Stay on brand and solve font crimes at canva.com, the home for every brand.
Mr. Douglas, you referenced BTK, Dennis Rader, and I was talking about the Zodiac attack at Lake Berryessa. Do you think that there's a high probability, a good chance that Dennis Rader learned that technique by reading about the Zodiac killer?
Yes. Yeah, because like I said, he was in criminal justice. In fact, the initial analysis we did, and we did 1 in 79, and we were just getting going, really. But then we did a really good one in 84 with a group of us, and we wanted to focus. We told the focus that over if you have a criminal justice university nearby, and sure enough, it was Wichita. In retrospect, he went to Wichita. They follow. They'll read books and things like that. People will always ask Nick too a question like, "Well, can they learn from your books?" I mean, it becomes like a manual, and not really, because you should be able to read. You can see when things are done that the patterns just don't always fit there. That the killer may do something to the victim that gives himself away. It may be the way the body is disposed of, say, a parent killing their child, and and maybe read a book, make sure you don't, let somebody else find the victim. Don't be the one to find the victim. Read some case like that. But in a case like that, when we found the victim, we see that things were done to the victim, that the victim was buried. I'm thinking of a case as I'm telling you this. Is buried in the back of a house, and there's a plastic bag over the face and part of the body to protect it from the elements, protect it from insects and dirt. It's something that someone close to the victim would have done. So we're not looking for a stranger murder. So you should be able to pick up if someone is following a case. We had a case of a this was years ago. It was Roy Hazelwood, who's since passed away. He was real good. He did a lot in the area of rape. And a woman would get these obscene calls, and she got a whistle, and she blew the whistle into the phone, and she would be murdered, and a whistle would be found, be thrown on her body. Also, a magazine that this guy just so happened to have, the killer had, of a woman using that technique on an obscene telephone call. And these were these old True Detective magazines we used to have years ago. So he got back. He got back to her in an indirect, not indirect, a very direct way from a magazine, and retaliated. But we ended up, getting him as well, that guy.
You referenced that a criminal could read and could study crimes and possibly read your books to help them get away with murder and avoid being apprehended. One thing that I found fascinating when reviewing some old video footage was a gentleman that you met and spoke with, Mark Byers, who at one time was considered a suspect, at least in the minds of the public, in the West Memphis 3 case. And I noticed in that video footage when he was being interviewed at his apartment that there were several of your books on his shelves or his desk. Can you tell us why you believe that Mark Byers is not a good suspect in the West Memphis 3 case?
He had a book that I gave him a book after I determined he was not a suspect, in the case. Mark Byers, he recently died. When he made that series of shows, what was the name of the first one? The first one,
the HBO documentary Paradise Lost: The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills.
He was plied with alcohol and prescription drugs. He was scripted, throughout that. The person who killed those children and the method and manner of disposal told me it was not Mark Byers. He did not have a history, really, any kind of a major kind of history of assaultive type of behavior. It was the other stepfather who was never interviewed by the police throughout the years. That 50 analysis that I did for the team that was working the case, the children, it showed me, and my goal was it a teenager? Were these 3 teenagers involved? No, the way that children were disposed of, the children didn't have their clothes on, which would be a way of controlling the kids if they're stripped down, or they could have been playing out there and they could have been naked to begin with when someone approached them. But the way they were disposed of, and the person stuck a stick in the clothing and poked it down under the water. That is fairly criminally, sophisticated. The children died of a combination of drowning and blunt force trauma. There were people early on in the investigation said there were teeth marks. There were human teeth marks on the body. It turned out it was animal predation. You probably know that, now. But getting back to Byers, I spent hours and hours. I mean, I spent with all the victims, and my goal after I determined who was not responsible, that this is an unsolved case. They meaning the investigative team, Peter Jackson, the director who was funding these experts here, was to talk to the parents, and I got to talk to all the parents except the Moore victim. They had since divorced, and I got the mother on the phone, and just could not even have an opportunity to speak with her. I did get to speak to the other victims' families, and at first they wanted to throw me out of their homes, but once I sat and explained to them how different things, what happened to their children, that this was not a youthful type of a crime at all, and it was then again the person who they came up with as a suspect, who was the other father, the stepfather, who was never interviewed. Do you remember the name, Nick?
Terry Hobbs. Yeah,
Terry Hobbs. I did interview him. He did certainly have the history of violence. They found his hair, which was interesting, but it was human hair on one of the in a ligature of the shoelaces that was used to tie one of the victims' hair. It was mitochondrial DNA was found on the hair, and also on a branch hair that was mitochondrial linked back to him. But the case isn't going anywhere because if they're not working the investigation at all. They had me speak to the district attorney down there, and after we came out with our show, Peter Jackson produced, and it was called West of Memphis, and the father. I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of that's the name of the show that we did. I think. But anyway, they had me talk to I can't. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. But I did speak to the district attorney, and the district attorney, he saw the show. He's kind of miffed about our take on it, and he said, he told me, I don't know. I don't know if they did it or not. And I said, I do know. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. And I explained to him the crime scene and the type of person that would have perpetrated these crimes. Is not a youthful type of an offender. And he tells me, though, he says, well, the timing isn't very good. The timing. And I didn't know what he meant. I thought maybe timing because he just released them from prison. But it turned out, 30 days later, I find out the timing isn't any good because he's running for political office down there. And that's why the timing wasn't any good. But no one, to this day, I mean, they didn't bring in like the Arkansas State Police in. They're a very good police agency. The Bureau really never got involved, in the investigation, either. They were hell-bent on making this a satanic type of murder. That was a big thing in that period of time. You had people like Geraldo Rivera on television saying that there's 50,000 children are being abducted yearly, and it's shown a satanic connection. Even Oprah Winfrey had a special on her show. Cops were being trained, look for certain graffiti indicating Satanism, so they were hell-bent on making that a satanic crime. And you have Damien Echols and wearing black, and they had blinders on, and so they made a case using initially Jesse Miskelly, the so-called confession that he gave. But it's a shame. It was a shame of the wrongful conviction, how their lives were pretty much destroyed. And so one book I did a book, Law and Disorder, that includes that case, includes the JonBenet Ramsey case, include the Amanda Knox case, all the cases I was involved with. I did that 3 years ago maybe.
Thank you guys so much for joining us here in the garage. Join us again tomorrow. If you're not following us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or you can follow the Colonel, the crispiest of Colonels, on the app called Untapped, so you can see what drinks the Colonel has been drinking.
That's right. Join us back here in the garage tomorrow. Until then, be good, be kind, and don't litter.
Canva presents True Crime of Design. In the office, Maya spots something unusual in the presentation.
What's this?
It was an off-brand font. Her coworker explains.
I added the font. I thought it was fun.
It was not. Maya solved it with Canva.
Open up Canva, one click, and the font is on brand. Easy.
Stay on brand and solve font crimes at canva.com, the home for every brand.